Hey, good morning. Hope you guys are doing good today. It is actually 10 o'clock a.m., so I'm a little bit on the late side today. But what's up, Bob? Hope you're doing good. Bob Motts is watching. Hey, that's awesome. Hey, it is November 20th, and the Thanksgiving is right around the corner, and then we have Christmas, and then another year. So, man, already flipping by. Unbelievable. If you are interested in always watching the archives of the morning Devo, you could always go to my archive page, which is on my YouTube site. So just go to YouTube, search Bo Willette, and there you go. If you subscribe, it just means that you'll get notified, I think, on YouTube. I think that's what that means. I'm not a YouTube pro or a Facebook pro for that matter, but anyway. Hope that helps. So Ezekiel 34, I go through my devotions just through the Bible. I've always done it that way. It's been awesome. You really kind of understand a little bit about God better. Kind of understand how God is working in history and through people. So I find it fascinating. Today's chapter is actually a very interesting chapter, especially in how it relates to Jesus. Some of the most famous words of Jesus is, "I am the good shepherd." Just remember that when you read Ezekiel 34. So let's see what it says. And that's the best thing about doing a devotion, is actually going through the Bible and just giving it its place in our life. It says, "Then this message came to me from the Lord." So Ezekiel, again, in Babylon, gets a message from the Most High, right? And it says, "Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds, the leaders of Israel." Okay, so the leaders are called shepherds. They are to shepherd the people. Now, I'm not a pro when it comes to shepherding. I don't really know anything about it. I've never really watched a show on it, I think. Trying to think real quick. I don't know if I've even seen a show like on what shepherds do. Maybe some old John Wayne movie or something where they're herding cows or sheep or something like that. But that's what comes to my mind. It's not my world, but yet it was the world of many, many people. And I would imagine there's a certain fine art to it. But these leaders that are being depicted as shepherds aren't doing such a good job. And we'll see why. What gets into our hearts that makes us not very good leaders? What is it that makes someone a great leader, and then what makes someone not such a good leader? Let's look at it. It says, "What sorrow awaits you, shepherds, who feed yourselves instead of your flocks?" Oh, the first thing is feeding yourself. Instead of looking to others, looking to just yourself. It's interesting how a lot of times we don't think of others. Others isn't on our list in the day. It's really what I'm going to do today. Instead of, hey, how can I bless that person? How can I help that person? Maybe I need to sacrifice something in order to help them, to be concerned about them, to kind of get my mind in their world instead of just my own. A leader, someone who thinks of others. So it says these people didn't. Instead of feeding the flocks, they fed themselves. Shouldn't shepherds feed the sheep? You drink the milk, wear the wool, and butcher the best animals, but you let your flocks starve. Interesting, you got all the best, but the flocks don't got anything. You look at leaders and the way they live. I think that's one of the things that frustrates a lot of people when it comes to like government, especially, or even religious circles. But I would imagine in our highly political culture, we kind of can associate this with government better. And that is, when someone, when you go to San Francisco and you learn where people live, right? This is, Dianne Feinstein's home, or I think that was her name. She was one of our government officials anyway. And, you see big homes and, and there's like a detachment there from just me, I lived on 4th Street in Simi Valley, in 4th Street. And, I'm not used to like that kind of a home. And I guess nothing's wrong with having that kind of home. But, you always hear the government, is there to serve up you, the people. But maybe there's a detachment when someone lives, as we say a lot of times, so high on the hog. And, they don't understand just the common person. Maybe there becomes a detachment, right? When the pastor has everything in the church, he's the one who's got it all, but everybody else is scraping by, kind of thing. It says, "You have not tended the sick or bound up the injured. You have not gone looking for those who have wandered away and are lost." Not a heart for people, not a heart for those that stray away. Notice that it says the sheep will what? Stray. Do you find that in your own heart? That heart to stray, that heart to go away, that heart to move away from God. Man, I don't really need God. I don't need his word. I'm just going to go wander over here a little bit, wander over there a little bit. I like how the sheep do stray. And it's not an indictment on the straying of the sheep as much as the leaders not pursuing those that go away. Am I a person who does go after that lost one? And of course, when you know Jesus' words, you're already thinking, whoa, Jesus talked about leaving the 99 and going after the one. Yeah. And this is what Jesus was wanting the people that he was speaking to understand, is that Jesus, was comparing himself to the bad shepherds of his day, meaning the leadership, those in power in Jesus' day were being told very pointedly that they were the bad shepherds of Ezekiel 34. And Jesus does it in beautiful ways, and a lot of times alludes to it by saying things like, I leave the 99 and go after the one. Those were ways that Jesus spoke to help them understand that he is referring to a certain particular passage of Scripture in order to let them see what that particular passage said and what they weren't doing. So hopefully that is clear. Jesus is just referring to these passages to make it very clear. And so they don't go after that one that's lost, right? So my sheep have been scattered as without a shepherd, and they are an easy prey for a wild animal. They have wandered through all the mountains and all the hills across the face of the earth, yet no one has gone to search for them. Remember how Jesus said, I long to gather you. I long to gather you, Israel. This is because they were scattered. And Jesus longs to gather them. This is Yahweh's heart, to gather the people. But the leadership weren't into it. They went to church, but they weren't so into maybe the people per se. They were into their job, what they did, kind of their role. And, sometimes that's important to think of as a parent too. Do I love my kids? Or am I just dutifully going about being a dad? Therefore, you shepherds, hear the word of the Lord. As surely as I live, says the sovereign Lord, you abandoned my flock and left them to be attacked by every wild animal. And though you were my shepherds, you didn't search for my sheep when they were lost. You took care of yourselves and left the sheep to starve. Therefore, you shepherds, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says. I now consider these shepherds my enemies, and I will hold them responsible for what happened to my flock. I will take away their right to feed the flock, and I will stop them from feeding themselves. I will rescue my flock from their mouths. Their sheep will no longer be their prey. Okay, so Yahweh says through Ezekiel to the leadership, you are not the good shepherds. You haven't taken care of the flock. You fed yourself. You've gotten fat on everything, but you haven't gone after those that are lost, those that need help. You really haven't gone out. You've stayed in your corner. You're not going out. And when you go out, there's risk. There's a lot of things that could go off. But instead, you've decided to hold back, to be comforted, to be comfortable. And that is a danger that a lot of us can get into as leaders. Instead of stepping out in faith, going into new territory, that kind of thing. Now notice Yahweh says, hey, I'm going to hold you accountable, and I'm not going to have you feed the flock anymore. I'm going to pull that from you. Now, this sounds very much like what? Revelation chapters, 2 and 3, where Jesus is the one speaking to the churches, 7 churches in particular, and Jesus says, if you don't repent, then I'm going to remove the church. I'm going to remove it from you. And Jesus speaks to the leaders of those churches. And it's the same tune. Do you see how Jesus, every time he speaks as though he's Yahweh? He says the same exact thing. Yeah, it's very cool. With the same heart. Yeah. One God, 3 persons. So, it's very interesting, just as Yahweh says to the people, the shepherds of Ezekiel's day, hey, if you're not doing this right, if you're not going to shepherd my people and care for my people, then I'm pulling the plug. So Jesus does the same thing in the book of Revelation. So very cool. So Jesus references this passage on many occasions. This is a very, very important passage of Scripture. Craig Hopkins says, to be comfortable is that the same as burying my talent in the ground. Yeah, that's another way. That's a great parable to think of, right? Just instead of stepping out in faith, and maybe, I'm not the best shepherd, and maybe I don't do a good job at this. And in a devotion, you always want to look at that. What can I be doing better? What is preventing me from not using my talent? Is it just laziness? Is it distraction? Is it fear? I'm fearing. I'm insecure. What is it that's really going on that prevents me from going that direction? Yeah, so a lot of good stuff to think about there. And it says, for this is what the sovereign Lord says, I myself will search and find my sheep. I will be like a shepherd looking for his scattered flock. I will find my sheep and rescue them from all the places that they were scattered on that dark and cloudy day. So again, you could hear Jesus in this. I will bring them back home to their own land of Israel from among the peoples and nations. I will feed them on the mountains of Israel and by the rivers and all the places where the people live. Yes, I will give them good pasture land on the high hills of Israel. There they will lie down in pleasant places and feed in the lush pastures of the hills. I myself will tend my sheep and give them a place to lie down in peace, says the sovereign Lord. I will bring them safely home again. I will bandage the injured and strengthen the weak, but I will destroy those who are fat and powerful. I will feed them, yes, indeed, or feed them justice. Wow. So there's an accountability with governments. There's accountability with those in these places of leadership that are there really to serve the people, but instead they have fed their own mouths. They have gotten fat. They are living luxurious. It's amazing how that works. And I think that's what we all get frustrated with in our world above all things, right? Is that idea of, God, look at where you live. I mean, look how many houses you have. I mean, I'm not, I kind of grew up, with Oprah Winfrey, that kind of or host of a show, but she's got big homes and she lives, I mean, she's a very wealthy lady. And when you have very wealthy people, sometimes telling you things, it hits us a little off, right? When they're just kind of detached. Again, you go, hey, I wonder if they're detached from just me. In just the local house, on the, just in a neighborhood, and that kind of thing. Living in an apartment, or that kind of taking a bus, walking to get your car fixed, because it's in the shop. You got to pick it up, do they understand that kind of life, or do they not? And Jesus also is frustrated with that. I guess that's the cool kind of thing to think about, is our God sees that injustice as well. And he doesn't just see it, but he says he's going to make it right. And I love how he says he's going to bring his people back into the land. Israel will be back into the land. And that land will do good for them. And that land will cause them to prosper. And in a sense, get plump. And isn't that interesting that that's where we're at today? This passage is, in a sense, fulfilled in our time, with Israel being in the land and feeding on it and prospering by it. And so God is a God of justice. He deals with his own people, meaning people who believe in him, and he also deals with people who do not believe in him. And there's a responsibility that we have as watchmen. There's a responsibility as shepherds. And we'll even see more coming up. And as for you, my flock, this is what the sovereign Lord says to his people. I will judge between one animal of the flock and another, separating the sheep from the goats. Ooh, another very interesting idea that Jesus speaks of. Isn't it enough for you to keep the best of the pastured for yourselves? Must you also trample down the rest? Isn't it enough for you to drink clear water for yourselves? You must also muddy the rest with your feet? Why must my flock eat what you have trampled down and drink water you have fouled? Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I will judge between the fat sheep and the scrawny sheep. For you fat sheep pushed and buttered and crowded my sick and hungry flock until you scattered them to distant lands. So I will rescue my flock, and they will no longer be abused. I will judge between one animal of my flock and another, and I will set over them one shepherd, my servant David, and he will feed them and be a shepherd to them. And I, the Lord, will be their God, and my servant David will be a prince among my people. I, the Lord, have spoken. Okay, so something that's reiterated that we kind of got is that when Israel comes back into the land, they're going to one day be back into the land, and David will actually be the resurrected David. David, I guess this isn't the same David, is it? Yeah, it's the David of David and Goliath. That David will be, once again, their prince. Very interesting. Over them. And also there would be this separation of those that were bad leaders and didn't feed the flock, and those that were scrawny, those that didn't receive, those that didn't get care, that God is going to separate those people. And this is interesting because Jesus speaks of this kind of stuff when he's talking to the people of his day, that he too will separate the sheep from the goats. And he will say to those on his right hand, hey, how did you treat my brethren? And if you treated his brethren good, you get it, you're in. If you didn't, you're not in. Wow. I really think when Jesus speaks of this, he's speaking of the millennial, entering into the millennial kingdom, the 1,000-year reign of Christ. And this is when King David will actually be that prince. And so that's for a future time. So what do we see today? We see Israel back in the land. But we see that this also moves us forward in time to a time where there is this judgment in Israel, and there is a separation of those that seem to be in and those that seem to be out. And then there's this reign of David. So very cool, really good things to study. It's a wonderful chapter to really delve into. You can get into a lot because there's a lot of references to this chapter. So let's finish it up. I said, I will make a covenant of peace with my people and drive away their dangerous animals from the land. Then they will be able to camp safely in the wildest place and sleep in the woods without fear. So Yahweh says, I'm going to make a covenant of peace with his people, and he's going to drive away the enemies of Israel. I will bless my people and their homes around my holy hill. That means Israel, Jerusalem. And in the proper season, I will send the showers they need. They will be showers of blessing. The orchards and the fields of my people will yield bumper crops, and everyone will live in safety. And when I have broken their chains of slavery and rescued them from those who enslave them, then they will know that I am the Lord. They will no longer be prey for other nations. The wild animals will no longer devour them. They will live in safety, and no one will frighten them. And I will make their land famous for its crops, so my people will never again suffer from famines or the insults of foreign nations. In this way, they will know that I, the Lord their God, am with them, and they will know that they, the people of Israel, are my people, says the sovereign Lord. You are my flock, the sheep of my pasture. You are my people, and I am your God. I, the sovereign Lord, have spoken. Now, there's so many references here. It's really cool. Now, of course, Bob Marley comes to my mind because I'm an old reggae guy. But I think of this passage, you are the people of my, you are the sheep of my pasture. I think of a song where he quotes this passage. So I kind of have that running through my brain right now. But, you look at this covenant of peace that's being made with Israel. And notice it says their crops will be awesome. And it's interesting that in our day, Israel, I think, is one of the top exporters of kind of, is it oranges or something like that? You can look that up. But they definitely are prospering in that way. But notice it says that they will prosper in a way where no longer people will kind of have bywords for them and cut them down and no longer want to devour them, and no one will frighten them anymore, and these kind of things. They're going to be in a real strong place, a strong place of stability. I see some of that today too, don't you? That Israel is, man, they're a strong country, strong nation, for sure. And but I do find a lot of future stuff kind of going on as well. And you probably do as well. So, I think some of the big pictures I see in this is when it comes to leadership, we all have to really take a good, hard look at ourselves and go, God, what is my leadership like? As a father, as someone maybe who works in a position of management, maybe in the church environment, in a school environment. What is my leadership like? And have I gotten into this complacency this selfishness, in my own life, where I'm not really concerned about other people, the flock. I'm not really going after people. I'm not really making the calls or being open. Instead I'm kind of stuck, in my little box. Is it about my own economic prosperity? Is it about me prospering and getting to, wanting more, and that kind of thing? And realizing that God holds us accountable. Again, one of the things of the reasons why me growing up did not like the Bible, because I don't want a God of justice, right? I'm scared of that. I'm scared because I know that I'm a sinner. And so many people know innately that they're a sinner. They know in their heart that something's wrong. And they don't want to come to the God of the Bible because they know there's justice there. But so they move away from it. They criticize it. They do whatever it takes, right, to move away. Because who wants the justice of God? Man, that cuts fine. And this is what the passage reveals, that God will hold us accountable for our actions. And we will have to face God's judgment. And this is what's going to happen to the leadership of Israel. The leadership's going to face the judgment of God. And how the people of Israel, how the leadership treated God's people. And it's interesting. Jesus said there's a flock out there that's not here, but I'm going to go get them. And isn't it amazing how we have been reached? Me, a guy with I don't think Jewish blood in me. How God has reached me. How the Good Shepherd has gone after me. And the Good Shepherd's gone out to people all over the world to reach the lost. Isn't that amazing? And, people will be judged in how they've treated us, the church. So pretty radical passage. A lot of interesting things in there. But, it's another good one to just look at ourselves, look at our leadership, and look at what we're doing in life, how we're living, how we're acting. So I hope you've enjoyed that one. That was a cool one. That's Ezekiel 34 in the books, and we're getting through the book, so we're going to be wrapped up pretty soon. So if you keep with me every day, you'll get through the Bible. So we'll talk to you guys later. Take care, okay?